So I'm Rachel Chanoff from Sundance, and I am thrilled and delighted to be here with these two because I would say they are the poster children for having amazing shorts that then turned into extraordinary movies. And so I think we should start by talking, if you could each talk a little about the trajectory of your short film to its life as a feature. Uh, Nikisa?
The short film is called Pariah, and it is a short film written and directed by Dee Reese. And we shot the short in Brooklyn, New York in the fall of 2006. And basically, friends from NYU. It was actually the first short film I'd produced from soup to nuts. It was Dee's thesis film at NYU, and we hired a bunch of folks from her circle. We didn't have many, connections or network or anything at that time, so we were paying for everything, credit cards, whatever way we could pull together the resources to pull everything together. We did. And we shot for 9 days in the South Bronx and started submitting to film festivals. And actually, a story that people don't really know is that we actually asked Sundance for an extension on submitting. So we got a month-long extension from Sundance. They didn't know us from Adam. I just thought, we needed the time, and I'm like, I'll plead our case, call them up, shoot them an email, and they actually gave us an extension. And so we shot for the 9 days, edited, for like a week or two, and submitted it and got rejected. And then we got rejected by every major, just line them up, South by Southwest, Palm Springs, all of them. And so we were kind of sitting with this film like, oh God, what have we done? We've run up our credit cards, we've done all this stuff. And then we got our first acceptance, which was to the Denver Stars First Look Student Film Festival. And so we went out to Denver, won an award there, and that sort of started the exposure for the film. And then we came back to NYU. We were in the NYU Women's Film Festival, and that's when we got the interest of the Sundance Institute, because someone I know there saw the film and asked us if we had a feature to consider. So the short film went on to screen at over 40 festivals around the world. It wound up winning over 25 short awards in the gay and lesbian, people of color, and mainstream space. And it sort of was proof of concept in terms of the feature idea was something that we thought was viable. So that's kind of the history.
And Jonathan, the history of Gaby.
Okay, hi, how you doing? I had made a short called Woman in Burqa that I didn't even know I was going to turn into, that I was going to even show to people. I was going to use it as a graduate school application, and then I didn't get into the graduate school. But I got into slam dance, and I won an award there, and then people were pushing me to make another short, and it was getting late in the year of, 2009. So I had kind of had this idea in my head for a long time, and I actually thought it was going to be a feature at first, but I didn't really have the time to make a feature, or the resources really at the time, or even the desire yet. I didn't feel like I was a good enough filmmaker actually to make a feature yet. And so I wrote the script and shot the short of Gaby in a very short amount of time, like 2 weeks. I was like, I'm gonna just do this real fast. The last one I took a really long time to make, and I didn't wanna make that happen again because so much of your life goes away. And that played Slamdance, and then it just started playing everywhere. But the short version of Gaby played at over 100 film festivals on 6 continents. It played at places like Jakarta, where I had to mail it by a certain date because the people who ran the film festival would get arrested if they didn't change their mailbox every week. There's gay festivals and that really break your heart, how hard these people work in some countries where it's illegal to be gay. Anyway, so, and as Nikisa said, I got very lucky because it was a comedy short, so it played many, many mainstream fests, and then often in the same exact town played their gay and lesbian fest, and the short won a bunch of awards. It's on the newest Walfin, which is the DVD that McSweeney's puts out of their favorite curated shorts every couple of months, which is very lucky and very nice to be on. And because the short played so many places and people enjoyed it, I always kind of got asked, when are you going to make a movie of it? These people are so great, they're so funny, and then also 2 producer women I know, Anne Hubble and Amy Hobby, who I respect deeply. Amy Hobby was one of the producers of Secretary. She's been working a long time, and she's really talented, and Anne also works for Kodak, so she's just someone you see at every single film festival and is very generous to filmmakers who use film, and just a wonderful lady, and they wanted me to make a film of this. And so with the combination of 2 producers who have worked in this business a long time and actual people, like real people who see movies, who aren't just festival people, wanting to see a feature version of it. I just decided that should be what I do, and I thought I might have exhausted the topic, but the more I saw it as I went to these festivals, the more I realized I had a lot more to say on it. So I wrote the script very quickly and then shot the movie, and it's a little absurd. I mean, I wrote the script last year in May, and we were shooting in August, and then it just premiered like last week. Don't do that. Like, write a second draft, people. I mean, it's just like absurd.
So,
Or not. Make other movies.
so of Pariah, did Dee have a feature-length screenplay? Had she thought of it as a feature-length and was making the short as a calling card, or?
Yeah, so the idea was conceived as a feature. She was interning on the set of Inside Man, and on break she would write it out longhand. So it was a feature film first. You know, we didn't have the resources to pull that together, so we thought proof of concept idea and do it as her thesis film. And so she took the first act of the feature, and we made some tweaks, made it a standalone, and then that became Pariah, the short film.
So what would you say was the short festival that served you best?
I would actually say all of them, you know, to be quite honest. I mean, I think for us, it was important because I think many of you know the stories about a Brooklyn teenager who's juggling multiple identities to please her family and friends. And so we would walk into a room and we would say, you know, this is a coming of age story about a black lesbian teenager, and literally people would be like, who wants to see that? And so it was important for the film to actually play well in all of those festivals that I talked about, to play well in the Gay Fest, but also to play well in mainstream fests, and also play well in People of Color Fest, to prove this idea that this story was universal. So for us, we look at all of the festivals that we went to were important for that reason, and also important for building our network. Every festival that we went to, we made friends with the programmers, we got to know the other filmmakers, and those relationships have been really key for us throughout our journey, no matter what film we're doing. So I would really say that all of the festivals that we were in were important and relevant.
Jonathan, was there one festival in particular that you felt served as a real launching pad or introduced you to the right people, or?
No, I have to just exactly repeat what she said. Every single festival I met someone who would wind up being super important later. Half my crew is other filmmakers, because real crew isn't going to work for the amount of money I had to make my film, so it's other filmmakers who wanted to work with me. And things like when, I mean, I don't want to like call out a town, but when I went to go play Dallas, I was like, what's this gonna be like? And it was amazing. And that was like, things like that actually really made me happy that it could play in New York. Obviously, it's a very New York-y short, but it played all over the South really well. I mean, it was just, every single fest, something happy or surprising happened at.
And I think the other point I'll make is that I think there's this idea that my short has to get into Sundance, it has to get into South by, it has to get into the Academy qualifying festivals, and it doesn't. The trajectory of Pariah the short is perfect. We got rejected from all of them, all the way through Tribeca. So it wasn't until May of that next year that we started playing festivals, and we wound up Academy qualifying like almost a year later at Palm Springs. So I think this idea that you have to get into these Academy qualifying festivals for shorts initially is not necessarily the case, especially when programmers go from festival to festival. Many of the programmers I know, especially in the short space, program for multiple festivals. So I think it's important to look at every fest as an opportunity.
So, yeah, and I just want to repeat that, because as someone who works at Sundance, I think people feel like Sundance is this very kind of mysterious, impenetrable edifice, and if your film doesn't get into Sundance, then that's it. And it's so far, good examples, I mean, it's so far from the case. As we saw Pariah at the Fusion Fest at NYU and just absolutely fell in love with it. So so missing one of the major festivals is certainly not a death knell for anybody's film. I just want to put that out there. Jonathan, can you talk about the financing of your short?
The short?
Yeah.
It's my pocket. I mean, like, nobody's going to pay for your short. I mean, I have a job. I have a day job at a production company, and I, like, borrowed their camera on the weekends that they had done this terrible reality show about, like, an old folks home where the old folks home people were, like, raging. It was called, like, Sunset Days with a Z, and they had bought all these, these extra Sonys so they could film like a bunch of angles at once. And I just took one and made my short. And I was like, if you're gonna make that kind of content, you can help me make my kind of content. So, but it still costs money. It costs money to do your color correction and your sound, and you're not going to get that stuff really like such bargains in New York City. So, but that was entirely financed by me, the short. But it was cheap. The feature, I had to delve into other kinds of financing, and it was good to have the short to get that financing.
So did Amy and Ann meet you at a film festival and say, what do you have in your bag? Or what, do you have a screenplay in your back pocket, or how did that work?
I've known Amy for a long time, and Anne I kind of knew through the festival circuit. And actually, it was last year at Sarasota, which is only in April, that they were like, when are you going to make a movie about Gaby? And I was like, well, when are you going to help me make it? And they were like, now. And so that was when I disappeared and wrote the script. I was like, oh, I have a script. And I didn't have a script. So I wrote the script in a couple of weeks and came back and gave them the script. And was like, here, I just had to do some touch-ups. Yeah, and then they read it, and we went through notes with them, and then we got an executive producer that came up with a nice chunk of the budget, and she was excellent. She had been a former editor for books, so she gave us great notes too, and I don't know, it just came together very, very nicely, and luckily.
So as people who had such successful first features, do you think you would ever go back into the realm of a short and use it as you say, kind of testing out an idea or test marketing an idea? Is there any use for a short after you've had a successful first feature?
Oh, I think so. Sure, they're just it's a different medium, and they're fun, and I really liked the experiencing festivals with my short. It's a much less pressured environment. I have to say, I just got back from South by Southwest, and I did not enjoy the experience of hanging around town waiting for my feature film to make its debut. You're not like, everybody's like, how you doing? And you're like, but with your short, it's much less pressure. Before your short plays at a festival, you're like, oh, come see my short, and it's good, whatever. But it's a very different experience. So I may go back to that. I may not. I don't know. But I do love the form.
Yeah, I think it can be really useful too, because on the one side you see the finished film, but the process and the journey of making the film is also important. So the opportunity to work with different people, to test out different ideas, especially if you're working with film versus video, I think it's a great way to workshop on both sides of the coin. So I think it's absolutely useful after you made a feature.
And can you just talk a little about being a producer on a short and how you hooked up with the material and with Dee, and if you're working with more than one filmmaker at a time?
It's funny, this is actually my third career. So I was a college basketball coach, and then I went and got an MBA, and I worked in brand management, and I actually met Dee working at Colgate-Palmolive, where she was working on toothpaste, I was working on toothbrushes, and then I swear, true story, I swear to God.
What was she doing on toothbrushes?
Brand management, the same thing. She'd got an MBA as well, and she thought that marketing would be, brand management would be creative, and she found it kind of stifling and not so creative. So she wound up applying to a bunch of film schools and writing programs, and wound up getting into NYU. And literally, maybe 3 or 4 months into knowing her, she's like, I'm leaving this corporate space and going to film school. And at the time, I was like, what? You want to be a starving artist? Like, I didn't really understand what it meant. And so we remained friends, and I wind up helping her on her second year film, and that's when I started drawing the parallels between what I was doing in the business world and what I was doing with her. It was just, for me, it was a different product, a product I could be more passionate about. This whole idea of supporting artists, I was really curious about that, and so that started my trajectory. So 4 or 5 years later, I wound up quitting full-time and then producing. So I absolutely work with multiple filmmakers. This whole idea for me of supporting artists and I'm a producer. I don't want to be a director. I don't want to be a writer. I know what I'm good at. And for me, it's about, supporting artists. And I think that you need someone like that. All of you who are creatives need someone like that on your team to help you move your vision forward and have your vision fully realized so that you can concentrate on doing what you do best.
And Jonathan, can you talk a little about, do you use self-produce? Do you have a producer for your short? You just did it all.
Yeah, I had come from theater where you just have to do everything yourself, at least at the level I was working. I was working at a very downtown theater when there still was a downtown. No, hush, pshaw, there's still a downtown, but there's no more. Every single theater I did a play at is gone. It's like a luxury bar, who knows. Anyway. So I was just used to kind of wearing as many hats as you could to get your show done, which is how it works. And so yeah, with my shorts, I pretty much did everything. And then with the film, it was odd because I was so used to doing so much that it was like, oh, other people are gonna do stuff. It was really like weird to figure out who was gonna do what. Like I cast my film entirely myself, and I can't give that up as someone who knows so many actors from working in the theater, But the stuff that Amy and Anne did was all stuff that was just so amazing to have someone helping you too.
But was it difficult to have other people offer their opinion and be stakeholders and offer
You
their
would
opinions?
think, and I certainly in my contracts made sure that my opinion was the most important. No, but that is something you have to be aware of when you negotiate those arrangements. Who's going to have final say, or if it's going to be a group decision, and it was very important to me to make sure I had final say on the film. But no, I thought maybe it would be, but then no, every contribution from everybody was good, and I found, oddly, even though I thought I wouldn't be, I was completely accepting of criticism, comments, changes. We introduced a whole new character just because Amy and Anne wanted, one less gay in my movie, which was fine, one less. There's plenty. Just no, you think it's going to be, and then it's actually just a benefit. It really just is.
And do you have another screenplay ready to go when people are now asking?
I do. I had the one I wrote before this. That was actually the one I was taking my time on, and then this was the one I knew I could do. So that's how, the one that would have taken more time to keep working on was the one I was like, eh. But I have that one now, and that's probably the one I'll work on next.
I think it's critically important. I mean, I come from the business space, so background, and so for me, it's strategic. You've got to have, your next whatever it is ready to go. Just the next one, but the next couple, I would say, ready to go, and also be thinking across mediums. I mean, the media, it's crazy. I mean, everything is there's a lot happening in the web space now, television, as well as film. So, if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller. I don't think the medium really matters. So having thought about, what type of ideas do I have for each of those spaces is, I think, a strategic thing that everybody should do.
Good. We're going to open it up and take some questions. Does anybody have questions? Right there.
You mentioned that you submitted to a bunch of festivals before you finally got accepted at the Denver festival. How many overall did you submit in that year or two period?
I'm going to repeat the question in case people didn't hear it. How many film festivals did you submit the short to?
I mean, we got rejected from everything in that first 3 or 4 months. You know what? I don't know what, maybe 45, 50. We maybe got rejected by 5 to 10 or something like that early on, because we actually stopped submitting the short to festivals, because that's another thing too. I mean, you can spend your life, on the festival circuit, and it was more important for us to focus on Pariah the Feature and some other project that we were doing. So we didn't sort of follow the film. We didn't give it probably the fullest life it could have had. But what we did is we went, Chris Gore at the time, this was many years ago, has this really great book about all the film festivals everywhere around the world. And he breaks them out by theme, by a number of different ways. And that was, because I'm not from film school, not from the film space, that was the book that I kind of used and went through and said, okay, my film fits into these film festival realms, and so we would break them out by category. We had this big spreadsheet, and we would submit. I think so. The strategy behind it, I think, is more important process than the actual numbers.
John?
Does that make sense? Okay.
And how many did you submit to?
Ooh, that book is great, by the way. I did the Sundance Slam Dance with each short and got rejected from Sundance both times, although a lovely personalized rejection. And then. No, really. I mean, they're lovely. I love the people there, and then you wind up becoming friends with them because you see them at every single festival after because they're looking for other shorts, and they're always like, "Oh, I should have played your short." And I'm like, "Ah, you should have." But because my first one won that award at Slam Dance, you actually, once you get, if you get a notoriety from any kind of A, B level fest, people start asking you, so you actually have to submit a lot less, which is kind of nice and much better for your pocket. Or you can say hey, I won an award at this fest, do I really have to pay your fee? You can kind of negotiate that stuff a little. But I definitely sent off to tons. Luckily I didn't have to apply as much each time because it played at a decent level size fest, to start.
More questions? Right, straight back there.
I was lucky enough to see Gaby last week.
Stop. No way. Somebody in the audience has actually seen my feature already?
I loved it.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Congratulations, Jonathan. It's definitely quite an achievement. I think people are absolutely going to love it. It's a really, really funny movie. And just wanted to touch on a comment that Nikisa made about the web and interactive media. Um, one thing I've heard is that writers are increasingly using the web as a means to get exposure. They may be uploading like a 5-minute user video on YouTube. And curious to hear your thoughts with pros and cons of that approach versus actually filming a short and bringing that to festivals.
The question is about the approach of getting your film out on the web.
I think it depends on what your goal is at the end of the day. Like if you are looking for producers and that sort of thing, I think that can be really helpful. If you're looking for financiers, I think any sort of proof of concept test thing is good. It just really depends on what the goal is and what you have in mind at the end of the day. I would recommend, we wound up spending a lot of money actually on Pariah, the short film, because we shot on film. We wanted to test different ideas. I don't know if that's the way to go for everyone. So I would keep in mind, how much resource you really want to put in and need to put into whatever that short, or short is. And I think that the web is a really great opportunity to get, lots of exposure. But again, you've got to think about where you're placing it on the web, what your end goal is, who your end audience is. And I think keeping that in mind helps determine, where you go and how you do it, if that makes sense.
Jonathan.
I mean, for me, the festival journey was easier to comprehend. I have no audience, no built-in audience for a web thing to quite work for me just yet. Maybe it would now. I mean, my Kickstarter video is hilarious, but that's not quite what you're talking about. But that certainly helped. I mean, that's the only real web thing I did. But I did this video where I would hold up what people could win, and then I would hold up one of my cats and be like, "You can't have her," and my cats would be like, so that helped us raise a lot of money, silly stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm not. I'm dually interested now in television and making another film. Whoever kind of asks first. I'm standing against the wall at the prom, waiting for somebody to come up and say hi.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, though, about the audience engagement piece. I mean, I think that there's huge opportunity there to build your audience before you even get to, whatever the feature film or whatever the end goal is. So I think using it in that way can be immensely helpful. Being able to, have something out on the web and actually build an audience before you even get to, being on set, I think that's immensely helpful, and I think all filmmakers should be looking seriously into that. I mean, it certainly has to fit your personality and that sort of thing, because there's a lot of upkeep and there's producing around that needs to be considered, but it's an interesting space for that type of thing right now.
Right here.
Yeah, I saw Pariah, both the short and the feature, and I was wondering, you said during the process that you knew you were going to make Pariah a feature. So with the subject matter that nobody wants to see, that nobody wants to make, but they're telling you that, what was your strategy to get Pariah a feature once the short was made?
I mean, it was really pretty traditional. I put together a business plan. We had a packet that we sent around that had the business plan, the short, and having had a short that we'd made and had been successful was really helpful in terms of proving this idea that the story is universal. And then, first went to production companies and, got, water and parking validated, and then went to smaller production companies, and then went to finally, a lot of amazing granting organizations and private equity folk to get it financed. So I think that the idea is you just never stop. I mean, your story has to be told, and so you find people that believe in you and that are going to continue to push it forward. And you don't take no for an answer. And just know that a no now doesn't mean that it's a no forever. A lot of those people that said no are, calling and emailing about what's going on now. So, I mean, I think taking a more long-term view about your career is important when you're thinking, when you're making that first feature as well.
Other questions? Right here.
Could you give any advice about seeking a producer for a short film, the writing group?
The question was advice about seeking a producer for a short film.
My advice on that is, are you based in New York? Are you here? There are amazing film schools with some producing programs, so I would start there. I would have an idea of what movies you like and who are find out who the producers are of those films, I would actually go after approaching those folks. Send them emails. Some of them will respond, some of them won't. But I would really take that kind of approach. Find someone who wants to make a film, who's made a film similar to the film that you want to make first, and then also don't forget those resources. I mean, New York is an amazing place to find, independent filmmakers, and I think the film schools are a great place to start, talking to other filmmakers about who's produced their shorts. When the lists come out, from these festivals about shorts that have gotten in, who are the producers for their shorts. So it's really doing, I think, your homework, and the web is great for that. People's information, Facebooks are all over the place, so I think it's easier to get in contact with folks. And I think I've never said no to a filmmaker that's approached me and said, hey, I loved Pariah, would you be interested in, if I can help, I will. If I can't, I'll let them know that I can't. And then most of the time I'll say, well, I'll recommend this person or that person. So again, it's just kind of doing your due diligence, putting yourself out there, and I think it'll work out.
Other questions right here?
Yeah, Nikki, so when I saw you speak at Women in Film, you were talking about getting yourself a partner because you said it's so hard for you to do Pariah alone. You said, next time I'm going to get a partner. Did you get somebody? Did you hook up, or are you still solo?
It kind of depends, but I'm definitely more into partner producing than I was with Pariah. I mean, for me, Pariah was the first narrative feature, so there was a lot that I wanted to learn, and it was great to experience all of it. And now I'd like to share that with the partners. So, yeah, I'm working with a couple of people, and I think just collaboration through filmmaking is really important, and demystifying this whole process for folks, I think, is really important too. So I'm all about building community, not just through partnerships with producers, but also I'm meeting DPs, I'm meeting gaffers and grips. The story of how this film was made, I mean, it took a village, and some amazing technicians and artists, at every stage of the process. So I think collaboration across the board is really, really important.
Right here?
It's for both of you guys. When doing an independent film on a shoestring budget, you try to get everyone to collaborate, and you try to get everyone into the story, and you throw out a lot of promises, and one of the biggest promises you throw out is, if this gets picked up, we're going to do our next one together, and we're all going to collaborate, and we're all going to eventually make money together. Have you guys gotten to that point? Have you been able to give back to your crew that you started with?
I didn't really promise that, which is terrible. I guess I should have. But I've been at least the actors in my movie are people I all worked with in the theater almost entirely, so they know they're along for the journey. I mean, it's been a while with a lot of those people. Most of the filmmakers that I worked with who helped on the crew are genuine friends who I have helped in other ways. They're just through my day job and other things I can offer, like helping. I mean, I've never said no to someone who was a friend or whoever helped me when they needed help. So I think it's just about like living your life like that, not promising anything that you never know what'll happen or not. I mean, I certainly haven't made any money off my movie yet. It only just played, and who knows what'll happen next. But I do intend to work with the same people, just because I like them as people, and everybody was, nice, which is really important when you're working on something so intense, so short, and so stressful, No divas allowed. No.
And that's the beauty of independent film. We get to choose who we work with, and we can, and that's, for me, that's a beautiful thing. You can create this whole, I'm all about creating the whole family atmosphere, and the idea is to take, the family from the film to film. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you find throughout the process that, wow, philosophically we're not on the same page, and that's okay. I mean, that's what this whole process is about, and that's why it's iterative, and that's why you try out different things and see what sticks. I just think it's important when you're making those promises. I mean, my thing for the crew of Pariah was, they actually deferred a significant portion of their fees until distribution, and so it was important for me as a producer to negotiate that if we were to make the sale and if we were to make enough money to actually go into profit, that they would be paid first. And so I think, doing things like that, I think most of the crew was like, I appreciate you for, letting us know that this is the agreement that you've made and that you've negotiated that we'll get paid first. We don't believe that it'll ever happen, but at least you had us in mind. And so when I actually was able to write those checks for the crew of Pariah, people were just like, this is insane. And I think that that's the spirit that you should try to take into every project.
So what's the difference now that you're working kind of in a studio film? What can you just talk a little about?
Yeah, it's less free. So I'm going to remain independent. That's the thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to have a foot in that studio space and then a foot in the independent space because there's less freedom. We have to wait for someone to greenlight us and to say yes, and there's a little bit of frustration with that. But there's also, wow, once they do say yes, there's a lot of resource. So I think for me, it's about maintaining a foothold in both worlds.
And could you speak a little to the creative control issues of working?
Yeah, it's when you go from you're your own boss to now you have 3 or 4 or maybe more people that you're having to collaborate with creatively. It can be challenging. It can be challenging because you're getting these notes, and some of the notes may make sense to you, some of them may not make sense. Some of them may be driven by things that you're not even aware of, corporate sort of themes or strategies or things like that. So there's a lot of management around getting everybody on the same page. And when you're working independently, you have less people that you have to be on the same page with, at least from the creative standpoint. In the studio space, there are more people. So I won't say one is better than the other, it's just different. And that's what we're experiencing now. It's just a different space, taking a bit more management. There's a lot more talking. Dee and I'll use her as an example. We're working with Focus Features again on another film. So we're working on a crime thriller that's set in Memphis. And so we've actually turned in our second draft. And Dee and I have our conversation, our creative process, but now we have to include not only the studio, but we're including managers and agents and all of that sort of stuff. So it's important. Our philosophy is not to make a film by committee. And so trying to navigate that while staying true to the story that we want to tell, it's interesting for us now. And so we're just trying to be really curious, detached a little bit from the process so that we can see, how things are working. And then, we'll see. I think you should ask me the question again in like a year. We'll see what's up. But it's interesting.
Back there?
You both mentioned the no diva policy, which our film companies say thing. But one of the challenges is that when you go from doing everything yourself with your friends to adding other people to the process that are friends of them so that you haven't met, sometimes someone has great skills and they don't look like a diva and they get on set and it's like, you know what I mean? How do you vet people? How do you manage that when you're trying to keep that no diva policy, but now you're starting to bring new folks to the mix?
Oh, I'm a fairly good judge of character, and when we interviewed certain people for positions we couldn't fill with friends, I was fairly intuitive about who may or may not have issues. And anybody, once or twice somebody tried to diva-ish a little bit on my set, but you out-diva them. And trust, on my set, there was no bigger diva than me. It was just like there was no competition for that slot. I think you can sense, and then if you get, look, I have certainly worked with people who are a huge pain in the asses, and you get through that process working with them, and some of them are super talented. There are amazingly talented people who are difficult to work with, and we all know this, and I'm not going to name names. But I think you have to weigh the benefits against the personality. I think you learn to deal with it if you have to, but hopefully you don't have to, especially if you're doing at this level with your own, kind of special project with money that's like friends and family, and you can avoid that if you try hard.
Yeah, I'm not into the working with the divas. Especially in the independent space, I think the first thing is to do your homework. It's not enough just to interview the person. I think it's calling, having their references, checking their references, finding out how other people feel about working with them. And then, of course, some people slip through the cracks and they get to your set, and if they're disruptive, you fire them. It's really not rocket science. I think in the independent space especially, you don't have to work with folks that you don't want to. So I wouldn't. I don't care how skilled you are. I would rather have someone less skilled that I can work with that has more heart or more drive or more whatever. I think that not sacrificing that early on is something that's going to help you as your career progresses.
Against the wall there.
I'm curious why you chose to use film and if you would choose it again.
question is about using shooting on film.
I did not shoot on film, even though my producer worked for Kodak, which is hilarious. But because I could have gotten it for free, but it's easier. But Nikisa, you use film both times?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And
For-
her film is gorgeous. It is one of the best looking films I have seen in years. And I saw it at Sundance with an audience of 1 billion people who wanted to see it. So she did not make a movie that people didn't want to see.
Thank you. Bradford Young, he's an amazing, amazing cinematographer. We really believe that the medium should serve the story. So we felt that this story had to be juxtaposed against the beauty of film. You know, the textures, the nuance of the colors, the color space that Brad and Dee wanted to explore. You know, we could only explore it with film. So that was really, why we had to shoot both the short and the feature on film, and that's what I believe. I mean, this whole concept of everything has to be shot on film. Although I love film and I love Kodak, and I don't know if Ann is somewhere here. But
Are you here, Anne?
I
Jesus.
think.
Oh my God, she's right there.
I love it, but I really think it should serve, and I think that there's this interesting space that we're in right now where, the digital space lowers the cost of entry, like all these things. So I think it should serve whatever story you're telling. And I think if you hadn't had the experience of shooting on film, then you should try to get that experience, because it's really amazing. The things that you can do and explore with film, you just can't do in the digital space right now. So I think it should serve whatever story you're telling.
So did they need to convince you as the producer, and they said, no, we need to, you were raising the budget and they were insistent on film. Was it ever a question, or you were just there you were on the same page and going to make it happen even though it's so much more of a challenge?
Yeah, I was on the same page. I was just like, okay, let's figure out how we can make this happen with the resource that we had. And so what we wound up doing is Brad wound up building lights. We had the collaboration between Brad Young, Dee, our gaffer, and our grip. It was just this amazing, it was like jazz, watching these guys work and us sitting down and having for hours and hours talking about how we can be efficient on set and shooting with film, because we never questioned the medium or what the story deserved. It was just a matter of figuring out how can we order ourselves and use the resources to the best of our ability to make it happen.
Over here by the pillar?
What are the current projects you guys are getting ready to work on or are in the process of working on? If you might be interested in a couple of details. And then also, what's one lesson you learned or wish you had learned in your previous projects that you're now going to take for your next project?
And Nikisa will go first.
I'm working on a lot of stuff. I'm an independent producer again, so I don't write or direct. So sustainability is kind of a big issue. So I have to have multiple projects at multiple phases. So I'm actually working on a nonfiction documentary that's in post. Working on, as I've said, another feature with Dee with Focus. Working on a television series with Dee. Have a couple other first-time writer-directors that I'm helping nurture into their first features. So all in all, I think there are about 11 projects that I'm working on simultaneously with partners in different spaces.
And what did you learn on Pariah? What was the key lesson that going forward?
My key lesson was, make sure you have all your money before you start shooting. I think that was probably, that's another panel. But yeah, that was
The panic panel.
Yeah. The
Jonathan?
cash, daily
I learned
cash
some
flow.
very simple lessons, like don't shoot in August in New York City. Every single location you go, the air conditioner will be broken that day. No. I wanted to, because there's so many indies, not Pariah actually is one of the ones that doesn't do this, but there's so many indies where it's like 3 characters go to the woods and talk. So I have my script has 28 characters, which is like absurd. I don't know if I'll do that next time. It's like a lot of people to deal with, and we actually use SAG actors, so there's a whole component of that. That's actually the most paperwork you'll probably ever deal with, is dealing with SAG, and it's a wonderful organization. I was so happy we used actors who were people who are have a union and all of that, but it's a lot of different work than using people who maybe aren't in the union yet. my next project is just it's my next script that I want to work on. It's a very specific story. I tend to work on things that are personal to me, but I take them and make them like a little bit exaggerated so they can be treated as comedy, but there'll always be like an undercurrent of seriousness. And this one it's about, oh, I'm not telling you. I'll tell you later. I think there's something unlucky about talking about projects too much in advance, because then, I don't know, it's like tweeting your jokes. You can't share jokes. How are you going to use them later? Somebody's going to take them. Don't tweet. No.
Two more questions? Okay. There?
When comparing the screenplay to the finished feature, what kind of insights do you gain?
I mean, a film will take on multiple lives. You know, it'll be one thing when it's on the page, totally a different thing when you have all the footage, and then another thing once you've put the footage together. So I think giving over to that process, that it's going to change and it's going to evolve throughout that journey, I think that's really important. Specifically, were the words that, Dee wrote, the words that the actor said, I would say 95% of those words were the same, but so many other things that aren't just what's on the page manifested throughout that journey of it becoming a different thing once it was in the editing room, and then once it was fully compiled. So I think especially as writer directors, giving over to that process, that it does change as you move along the journey, is important.
There were one or two scenes in my movie that were absolutely insane, and the good thing about producers Anne and executive producer Laura, who are sitting in the back, was that they just said, no, shoot the crazy scenes and decide after. And even though we cut them, I'm like so glad we shot them, because they're insane, and they'll be like an extra on the DVD if DVDs still exist by the time I have a DVD, but on the Blu-ray. But the good thing is the movie I see now is the script I wrote. It's just, a little more tighter. It's tighter now because I could see it, in a way with like genius actors saying it, and then you really know what's working and what's not working. And we cut about maybe 3 whole scenes from my movie that were in the script, but that's it. Otherwise, it's just like tightening of moments here and there.
On the aisle back there?
Yeah, the casting was actually really, really great for the short. So Dee did the casting, basically. She led the casting process for the short film. And basically, she wrote a breakdown. I, found Breakdown Express by Googling, where you place the ads for breakdowns for finding actors. Also, we brainstormed about going to local film schools and acting schools to place the breakdown. And so we really did a wide casting. So we didn't have a casting director on board for the short film. And so we wound up getting our lead actor, Adepero Duye. She wound up submitting herself after she'd seen the Breakdown Express casting. So, we really kind of threw everything at the wall for the short film, and really we're looking for the best actors to fill the roles. For the role of the father, though, a friend of Dee's, Wendell Pierce, was a mentor of his, and so we thought that, wow, it'd be amazing if he would be into playing the role of the father. We didn't know him directly, but we asked this guy if he would pass on a letter. So Dee wrote basically a love letter saying, we think you're amazing. We've seen you in these things. We think you'd be incredible in this film for these reasons. If you're open to it, we'd love to send you the script. And in this case, he received the letter and then said, I'd love to read the script. He read the script and said, I'll do the movie. And so that was kind of, I guess, the best case scenario. For the feature, we actually wound up hiring a casting director. Her name is Edie Belasco. She's LA-based, and she's amazing. And so that was a completely different process for us. We had a bit more access, and she helped us learn about this process of, submitting to agents and managers and that sort of thing. And so she walked us through all of that. But we spent a lot of time actually. Is this being videotaped? Okay. star effing. I won't finish that out, but like we spent a lot of time chasing a lot of actors, high profile actors for roles, and it was one of my executive producers that said to us, don't worry about that so much. This is your first feature. Find the best actors for the roles. You're in New York City. You're going to shoot in New York. They're amazing theater actors. You guys should be going to see plays. You should be, going to the depths of the earth to find the best actors for your film. And that was some of the most freeing advice that we'd ever taken. We decided, after this short that we would keep Adepero Duye and Pernell Walker, who were our two leads. Throughout the process of the feature, with more exposure for the project, there were a lot of people that said, if you cast such and such, you'll get this money. Or if you cast this other person, you'll get this money. But we held fast to, we knew we had amazing actors that we wanted to give the opportunity to play in the feature. And so we're happy that it's like 40 motherfuckers you really haven't seen. And I think that's great. We take great pride in that. So, sorry, damn.
And with that, I think we'll take one last question. Right there.
This question is for both of you guys. Have you had to deal with being sort of pigeonholed, because your movies do speak to universal themes, but they come from a really specific world? Like, Nikisa, are people coming to you with projects that are like Pariah, and Jonathan, are people asking you basically like Game 2? Do they want just the same sort of thing from you?
What was amazing about South by Southwest and getting into such a hetero dude hipster film festival was I just got over and over again some guy coming up to me like, dude, your movie's so good and it's really not that gay, So the good thing is I feel like the what I've gotten out of this experience so far with that is that we've had a time where, I labeled my movie is called Gaby because if that's gonna bother you, you can't, you know already. Don't come. But the people who do come and then like it, I think they realize that it's about a lot more. And so far, yes, people are like, help me write my comedy, you're so funny. And that's okay, but I don't feel limited at all yet, because I've only shown them really one thing I can do. I can do a lot.
Nikisa.
Yeah, as a black gay woman in this space, everybody's always trying to put me in a box, and I'm not about that. So, if I have to, I just don't come from that space. So, to answer your question directly, am I getting all the black lesbian drama, coming of age dramas? Yes, I am, but I'm also getting, some other things too. And so for me, it's just about finding the right story, the right filmmaker, that is really interested in taking a journey. So.
I want to say thank you so much to you two who really making extraordinary films.